My name's Dave Dubeau, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content. Hey folks, welcome back. Today, zooming in, our special guest is a very experienced real estate entrepreneur. Mr. Ismael Rey Reyes has been in the real estate game for quite a number of years, and he brings a very specific skill set to real estate, and that is that Ismael's original career was in the military, is in the Army. So he's applied a lot of the discipline, the leadership, the organization skills that he learned in the military towards real estate, specifically multifamily and syndication. So, Ismael, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Dave, thanks for having me, man.
Hey, man, can you give us a quick snapshot? We're just starting this up. We're towards the end of January 2025. What does your portfolio look like right now? Just give us a big overview, a snapshot.
Just under 1,000 units that we have some sort of asset management responsibility. In one, we are lead sponsor. In several, we are on the asset management team as a general partner with full transparency on everything coming from the property manager and from the rest of the team. I also run a fund. So we have a fund where we use to raise capital for real estate investments from accredited investors.
Very, very good. All right. So you're kind of lead sponsor in a few deals. You're co-GPs on some other projects. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct.
And a lot of what you bring to the table is the asset management side of things. Is that what I'm understanding as well?
I think it's where I started, and certainly it's something that we continue to apply. But I'm much more focused on the real estate investing fund. As I transition here, I really enjoy the aspect of being able to travel. And if you are asset manager, you're likely not doing too much traveling. If you are, you're traveling to the asset or whatever the case is. So I really do enjoy the capital raising side, but understanding what the asset managers do, where the pitfalls are, and how to kind of poke holes on. Sometimes you get stories from people about what the property is doing, not doing, and just understanding that from the experience of having done it is very useful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, my wife and I are big into travel. We're just on a tear since COVID, that's for sure. So yeah, catching up with lost time there. So Ismael, tell me a little bit about, we were talking offline before we started the recording, that these days, well, it's always been important for you, but transparency and partnerships are a big part of your focus these days. So unwrap that a little bit for me, starting with the whole transparency side of things.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's critical. I mean, in today's day, with everything that's going on with regards to the rates and folks that got into this business really at the top of the market, if you will, pre-COVID, if you will, pre-pandemic, for those that, COVID's a bad word, whatever we want to call it, there was certainly an impact to real estate. And so if you got on at the top of the market and you got onto some bridge products, you're probably hurting a little bit, maybe, right? So what we've seen is on some of the deals where we partnered on, some of those partners, instead of embracing and improving communications based on what's happening with the asset, they sort of put their head in the sand. And so when I talk about transparency, I'm seeing it firsthand, where in the military, when you have a situation, the point is to let people know, hey, we have this problem and here's what we're doing to solve it. And the sooner you do that, the better. Whereas what we see in a lot of cases is, especially when we're not the lead sponsor, is we're kind of nudging the lead sponsor to provide information, right? Say, hey, you got to put this out. We got to let people know what's going on. And there's always this little bit of hesitation because I believe that they think that somehow it's going to impact them negatively. And I think it impacts them negatively no matter what, but it's going to be much worse if you try to keep it a secret. because it's going to come out. And so transparency is critical. And I just can't, I don't know why, but somehow it translates to like, hey, maybe if we don't tell investors, it'll go away. No, it won't.
It's amazing what people tell themselves, isn't it? It's like even folks that you would think should know a lot better. But you're absolutely right. It's like putting your head in the sand. That isn't going to solve the problem. The issues are not going to magically go away like with pixie dust or something like that. So it's a matter of, yeah, you know what? Step up, swallow that bitter pill that you're not as smart as you thought where you were, and your deal didn't go the way you told everybody was going to go, and just face up to it, admit it, and say, hey, here's the situation and here's what we're doing to try to manage and rectify that. But that is, you're right. So many people have a challenge with that. So that was something I was wondering about, the military connection there, because, not being a military person myself, my image of that is drill sergeants screaming at you for any minor infraction. So it'd be like trying to cover your butt for things. But you're saying it's actually the opposite. Like your big takeaway from the military is when there's a problem, just be right up front about it, communicate clearly about it. Don't try to cover your butt.
Yeah, I mean, my background in the military, so I was retired as a lieutenant colonel, and I spent some time as an S2, which is essentially the intelligence officer in the unit. And so my job was to tell the commander what the enemy was doing. And sometimes the enemy was doing stuff we didn't anticipate, and it's not good. I mean, any plan that you have goes by the wayside the minute you have contact. And that goes for the military. That goes for any kind of planning that you do in the military or otherwise. You have a plan, but things happen. And so my job was always to provide the commander feedback about, what's going on and what we needed to do. And frankly, you had to do that quickly. And no commander wants to be, they want to be in the know. If, for example, they need to react and you don't give them that information, it takes away their decision cycle time to make decisions to adjust.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a very, very valuable lesson. The other thing you were talking about is the importance of team, and that kind of ties in with this whole transparency thing. So you've seen now how some lead sponsors you've worked with in the past have dealt with untoward situations, their deal's not going exactly the way they planned. How does that affect how you're moving ahead, partnering up with other people in co-GPs in the future?
Yeah, so we implemented. It's amazing how, just as a side note here, how not telling the truth is acceptable to some people, and it's just I don't know how, but apparently they think that they can get away with it. But what we've done is we've implemented a vetting plan. It's a multi-step vetting plan where essentially we go through and do a background investigation. Even before we do a background investigation, we do a full screening, have them tell us up front, operator, good, bad, and indifferent on what you've done. Yeah. Then we go ahead and actually have them pay for the background information in investigation, because if they're not willing to do that, that's file number one, right? So they pay, we get their background on them and their businesses. And then we figure out whether what they said on the screening is matching what's actually coming out. And then we have a follow-up to determine, where the potentially some of the differences are. And then even beyond that, then we go ahead and start hitting references. It's a small world. It's a small op. When you start doing multifamily, everyone knows each other. Yeah. And so it's not too hard to talk, maybe 2 points of separation between you and an investor in one of their deals, at most, right? So very quickly we can kind of, zero in and do some background looks to even talk about how do they communicate with investors? Are they responsive? You start going into that. So we've done all of that before we even get to the point where we start looking at deals. Wow. Because a deal can be a good deal, but if it's a bad operator, it's probably not going to be as successful as it could be. And so, especially in a low tide, right? In the high tide, I think, most people will be, successful to some extent, but when you have to tighten up, your operations, a bad team can really drop the ball. And so we've gone through that entire process. And frankly, right now, we only have one operator that we're working with. And we've interviewed at this point about 15, and wow, put them through the cycle. And there's really just one right now that we work with that we're willing to tell investors, hey, we believe in this operator, and we've done multiple deals with them. I know there's more out there, and we're working through that, but they have to pass that vetting. Otherwise, it's just not a go.
Wow. So 14 out of 15 didn't make the cut. Without getting into names or anything like that, what were the typical things they were fibbing or bluffing or lying about between their initial thing and reality?
One of the big ones, believe it or not, and you would think that they would know this, is bankruptcies, right? So you whether it's your own personal business or you were involved in something that where the business itself went bankrupt. Got it. Things happen. I mean, and a lot of people use bankruptcy as a tool, which good, better, and different. They can, but that's not something you forget. So when there's a screening question that goes, "Have you ever declared bankruptcy?" and you click no, right? Because if you click yes, it's an automatic. Okay, we're not doing this, right? At this point, why even go through the process? Why would you even pay for a background when you're not gonna pass? But they click, never had a bankruptcy. And so we do the background, and it comes out like, well, you did have a bankruptcy. And you talk about what happened here and why did you not, why did you miss the question? And you kind of start digging into that. But the reality is, I think they must think that the system's not going to find it. But we use to do our backgrounds, we use a very well-known background entity that does frankly clear is really the back end of that. And they're the ones that are at the airports doing the airport screening. So we get a very thorough look at people. And that's the big one. I don't know why, but that's one. And then when they pass that, we've had a couple where essentially talking to other investors, they didn't quite, get the reports on time. They weren't communicating.
You're talking to LPs that have invested in their syndications.
Yeah. They had a little bit of trouble. They didn't mention it. So it's going to come out. So I mean, again, that's part of the thing, right? Just tell people, be transparent. If you tell me like, hey, we had a couple of deals that we're having to work through, that's 99% of the operators out there are having to deal with issues right now. That's not a surprise, especially if you're doing C-class bridge product. Yeah. And that's automatic, right? So to be transparent, but those are the two big ones, I think.
Yeah, very, very robust screening process that you put people through, and no wonder you feel so comfortable if somebody actually makes it through with flying colors. Yeah, it shows that they're a straight shooter. Ismael, it sounds like these days a lot of your focus is on finding investors and funding your fund. So tell me a little bit about because I know you do a lot of different things. Like you've written a book, you're very involved in your local, I think, multifamily real estate investing association or club. You had a YouTube channel, you're on podcasts like mine, you do all sorts of different things. What do you find most effective for you for connecting with and finding new investors for your fund?
I think honestly, the after all is said and done with, the best way to connect is go out into the community and in person. I mean, webinars are great. And any way that you can build a base that tells people about you and they feel comfortable with you is great, but there's nothing that beats, eye to eye contact. And then the other thing is, obviously, when you're talking to folks, find out what they want. I mean, I get it. Everyone gets at some point. If we talk long enough, I'm going to talk to you about some potential opportunities. That's going to come. That's part of what I do. But before that, I want to find out about you. We have to be a good fit also. So when you talk to folks, sometimes the person that you talk to is not the person that actually invests, but they're the ones that recommend you to the person that is the one that's actually looking. So building that network is critical. And
so what do you do to build your network? How do you get out and about? How do you make these connections and do this kind of networking?
Yeah. So one of the big ones, obviously, most places have a real estate club. What you're going to probably connect with there are other people that are trying to be operators. Although there are some folks that that are passive investors that are wanting to learn, and they're not comfortable trying to do it on their own. And I always tell people, you can do two things. You can buy into a mastermind, or you can buy into a deal and learn from from that deal while you're getting some income from the actual investment. And so that's one way. For passive investors, you kind of want to go where there's more people that aren't in the space, right? You
Yeah.
want to educate them. So a lot of times, if you're just going to straight business networking, where not everybody's in real estate, that's a great way, because you're helping each other out. They've got stuff they got going on. Tell me about what you're doing, and here's what I'm doing. How can we collaborate? I think that's one of the biggest ones that I see. And then if you're involved in the community, I work with a lot of folks they're in the military, or they're retiring, or they're veterans. I'm trying to connect more with veterans organizations here in Florida, especially because that's where you're going to run into people that you have some commonality with, which helps when you're talking about doing business together. There's no other way to say it. I mean, you and me, the more we are alike, the more comfortable you're going to feel about potentially investing with me. And let's face it, these are $50,000, $100,000 investments. There's got to be a lot of trust built there.
So Ismael, I'm not looking for exact stats here, but give or take ballpark, if you compare the investors that you brought on from some sort of involvement in the real estate investment club versus being out in the community, where do you tend to have better success? Is it bringing on people that have already kind of drank the Kool-Aid but haven't taken any action yet, that are part of clubs? Or is it connecting with people in the community that have kind of fresh eyes, and you educate them about syndications, or you educate them about the fund and you bring them in that way? What have you found which one might work a little bit better?
I think the one where you're going into a different space, right? Outside of real estate, because most real estate folks, a lot of them are entrepreneurial, and they're just trying to do exactly the way I started. And they're hustling, and they may have some money available, but they're not exactly where they need to be from an accredited standpoint. So you want to go where you have busy professionals that are not necessarily in a space, but they're looking at alternative investments. They're already in stocks, they're already doing other things, but they have an allocation that they need to plug into something. And so that's where you get your larger investors, is folks that are not necessarily in the space, but they've got some capital. Every once in a while on the real estate side, you'll come up, somebody will pop up that is trying to 1031 out of something that they have, or maybe they just sold something and now they got to figure out what to do with it. So sometimes you can get some potential capital that way, but most of those folks already have an idea of what they want to do, because they're real estate entrepreneurs. So they've already have a sense of how they're going to move that money. But so that'd be my take. I think you get more outside of the space than in it.
I completely agree. So I'm glad that that's what you've seen as well. Now, just a question. So when you're talking to military folks or former military folks that you have definitely have that connection, that affinity with, are you able to bring them on even if they don't quite qualify as accredited investors? Like, is your fund able to take funds from non-accredited investors, or how does that side work?
A good question. So typically, most of the deals that we do, syndications that we're working on right now, are hybrid structures.
Okay.
Where you come at the very beginning of the raise, it's a 506B Bravo, which allows you to bring in non-accredited investors. And so that's typically where your retired military that are looking at doing something different. Most of them may qualify as accredited investors based off of their net worth, but most of them aren't making that 200,000 plus yet, right? But they're getting there, because now they retired and they are probably have decent retirement, and now they're walking into maybe similar jobs that are paying six figures. So
in the private sector,
eventually they do qualify. One of the things that I talked to them about is in the military, folks have the thrift savings plan in the government. You have thrift savings plan, which is the equivalent of the 401k. So when they're retiring, there comes a point where they can move that money out of that that thrift savings plan and move it into either a solo 401k if they're entrepreneurial, or a self-directed IRA, and then that then allows them to use some capital. So sometimes they go, I don't have a ton of money, and then when we talk about it, they have money sitting, and there's a way to make that work for them. And so I think those are the big ones.
Nice. Ismael, time flies when we're having a blast. We'll have to have you on the show again, but in the meantime, if people would like to connect with you, what's the best thing for them to do?
Yeah, my website, IsmaelReyReyes.com, IsmaelReyReyes.com. And then from there, we can connect. I love talking to folks, whether they're investing or whether they just want to figure out how they can get into the space as an operator. So we do them both.
Nice. Ismael, thanks so much for being on the show. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Dave. Take care of yourself.
All right, everybody. Take care. We'll see you on the next one. Hey there. I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, if you want to listen to more daily interview content, make sure you subscribe. And if you're an active real estate investor and you're doing deals and you'd like to get featured on this show, then just head over to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now at moneypartnerformula.com, we help real estate investors to create a process for predictably getting capital so they can do more deals without relying on hard money lenders or the banks. We do this by building them a private capital marketing system. Now, if you want help turning yourself into a big money capital attraction machine, then book a call with our team to see how we can help. Just visit moneypartnerformula.com to find out more. All right, take care, and we'll see you on the next interview.